Imagine this. It's 3 a.m., you're wide awake, eyes locked on the ceiling, and your brain won't stop running through worst-case scenarios. What if your transmission fails? What if your computer crashes? What if you're suddenly out of work? What if your dog needs emergency vet care? Does this hit close to home? What if there's an exact figure that could wipe out nearly all these 3 a.m. worry sessions and completely reshape how you move through the world? Most folks assume financial targets are just random figures wealthy people invented to make everyone else feel behind. But here's what might catch you off guard. There's genuine psychology and real math explaining why specific savings amounts create massive shifts in how you live day to day. And that first major turning point isn't $1 million or even 100 grand. It's $10,000. I'm Barry, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time analyzing money, human behavior, and why certain people seem to coast through financial curveballs while others are perpetually anxious about their checking account. If you've ever been curious about what it genuinely feels like to have various amounts tucked away, and even more critically, how each benchmark reshapes your choices, go ahead and smash that subscribe button and drop a like if this content resonates with you. Before we explore what makes $10,000 so transformative, let me sketch out what existence looks like without that cushion. You recognize that moment at the supermarket when you're doing mental math about whether you can swing the brand name cereal, or if you're stuck with a store brand that tastes like cardboard packaging, or when your crew wants to grab dinner and you need to manufacture some excuse because admitting that $25 for one meal would wreck your weekly budget feels impossible. This is daily reality for countless individuals stuck in the paycheck to paycheck grind. Each money choice becomes strategic calculation. Every surprise expense feels like it could be catastrophic. You're perpetually in defensive mode with your finances instead of making forward-thinking decisions about what's ahead. But here's where it gets fascinating. There's a particular psychological shift that occurs when you build up that first $10,000. And it's got nothing to do with buying luxury items. Actually, most folks who hit this benchmark don't radically alter their spending patterns whatsoever. The genuine change is way more nuanced and considerably more impactful. What shifts first is how you view risk. When your savings are at zero, everything feels hazardous. Accepting a different position, relocating to another city, or even booking a trip becomes this huge anxiety source because you understand that one misstep could leave you financially wrecked. But when you've got $10,000 sitting there, those identical choices suddenly feel doable. You're not necessarily walking out tomorrow to become a circus performer, but you might finally feel bold enough to pursue that raise you've been contemplating for ages. You might be open to putting money into yourself through education or credentials that could elevate your income potential. That financial cushion doesn't turn you reckless. It grants you permission to think beyond merely making it to your next paycheck. There's also something remarkable that happens in your brain when you witness a five-figure number in your account for the first time. Brain researchers have discovered that financial stability actually lowers cortisol production, which is your system's main stress chemical. This means hitting $10,000 doesn't just alter your money situation. It physically changes how your body handles everyday pressures. Consider the last time you faced a minor vehicle issue. If you're scraping by paycheck to paycheck, that dashboard warning light might as well be counting down to financial catastrophe. You're instantly stressed about covering repairs, whether you'll need to charge it or if you'll be asking relatives for help. But when you've saved $10,000, that identical warning light becomes a basic nuisance. You're irritated naturally, but you're not freaking out. This transition from panic to slight frustration might appear minor, but it creates ripple effects across your whole existence. When you're not perpetually anxious about finances, you make sharper choices overall. Your sleep improves, your work performance increases, you're calmer with loved ones and colleagues. Money anxiety impacts every dimension of how humans behave, and eliminating that anxiety releases mental capacity you can channel toward genuinely bettering your circumstances. But here's what most folks miss about the $10,000 benchmark. The bulk of the advantage doesn't stem from using the money. It stems from understanding the money exists. This is what finance professionals call the emergency fund effect, and it's likely one of the most overlooked ideas in money management. An emergency fund isn't truly about emergencies. It's about the calm that flows from knowing you can manage emergencies. Most individuals who accumulate $10,000 rarely actually use it for crises. Instead, they apply it toward possibilities. They put it into learning. They launch ventures. They relocate to superior areas. Or they simply gain the mental space to concentrate on growing their earnings, because they're not constantly fixated on basic survival. There's also a self-assurance element that's tough to measure but impossible to dismiss. When you're aware you've got funds banked, you present yourself differently. You bargain more effectively. You're more prepared to reject poor arrangements because you're not operating from desperation. This confidence frequently translates to superior career prospects, stronger connections, and better overall life results. Now, you're probably thinking, $10,000 feels like an unreachable sum to save, particularly if you're presently struggling to set aside even $100 monthly. But here's what's intriguing about how people think. The toughest part isn't accumulating the actual money. The toughest part is adopting the identity of someone who saves. Most individuals treat saving like a short-term diet. They slash spending dramatically for several weeks, save intensely, then burn out and revert to previous habits. But folks who successfully reach $10,000 don't view saving as temporary deprivation. They see it as evolving into a different kind of person. This identity transformation is essential because it influences every financial choice you encounter. When you perceive yourself as a saver, you begin spotting expense reduction opportunities you never noticed previously. You get more inventive about discovering extra income channels. You start planning long range instead of chasing instant rewards. The wonderful aspect of this journey is it becomes smoother as you progress. Banking your first thousand is tough. It demands real lifestyle adjustments and continuous discipline. But saving your second thousand is noticeably less difficult because you've already built the routines and outlook. By the time you're pushing toward your fifth or sixth thousand, the whole process feels nearly effortless. There's also a mathematical truth that makes $10,000 especially powerful. This sum can handle the overwhelming majority of surprise costs that financially derail people: vehicle fixes, healthcare charges, unemployment, family crises. Most situations like these resolve for under $10,000. This means once you arrive at this level, you're essentially protected from most financial disasters that trap people in the paycheck-to-paycheck loop. But maybe the biggest transformation when you save your first $10,000 is how you begin thinking about money fundamentally. Rather than seeing money as something that simply vanishes from your earnings monthly, you start recognizing it as a mechanism that expands your choices. Before savings exist, money feels limited and temporary. Every dollar spent disappears permanently. But when you've got $10,000 functioning as your financial base, you start grasping that money can genuinely generate more money. This is when people get curious about topics like investing, additional income streams, and earning while you sleep. Not because they suddenly became finance experts, but because they finally possess the headspace to consider more than just paying basic bills. When you're not constantly stressed about rent, you can start pondering retirement funds. When you're not anxious about food costs, you can start exploring market investments. Here's something that might surprise you. The individual with $10,000 saved is genuinely nearer to financial freedom than someone with zero savings, even if that second individual earns double the income. Because the saver has mastered the most crucial ability in building wealth, which isn't making money, it's retaining money. You'd likely know individuals pulling six-figure salaries who are somehow perpetually broke. They operate pricey vehicles, occupy upscale places, and dine at establishments charging $20 for salad greens, yet they've got nothing saved. Meanwhile, you might know someone earning $40,000 yearly who's managed to build substantial savings through deliberate spending. The distinction isn't earnings, it's mentality. And reaching $10,000 in savings is like an intensive course in cultivating the proper financial outlook. You master separating desires from necessities. You become adept at cutting costs without feeling deprived. Most crucially, you cultivate the patience for delayed satisfaction, which is arguably the most valuable money skill anyone can acquire. Now, let's discuss what $10,000 can genuinely accomplish in real-world terms. First, it handles virtually any auto repair shy of requiring a completely new motor. Most car emergencies run between $500 and $3,000. With 10 grand available, vehicle troubles transform from financial disasters into minor headaches. Medical situations become manageable also. Even lacking excellent insurance, most urgent appointments, ER visits, or smaller procedures land within this window. You won't cover major operations with $10,000, but you can handle the vast majority of health concerns that emerge unexpectedly. Losing your job, probably the most frightening financial scenario for most, becomes something you can truly weather. $10,000 provides roughly 3 to 6 months of cushion for securing new work based on your costs. That's sufficient time to be choosy about your next move, rather than frantically grabbing the first thing offered. But here's where things get genuinely interesting. Having $10,000 doesn't merely shield you from disasters. It actually generates possibilities that wouldn't otherwise exist. Perhaps you learn about a training program that could increase your annual salary by $10,000, but requires $2,000 upfront. Without savings, this is impossible. With your financial foundation, it's a clear investment. Or maybe a friend shares they're launching a company and seeking a modest investor. Without savings, you can only offer encouragement. With $10,000, you've got the choice to join something potentially life-changing financially. I'm not suggesting you should pour your entire safety net into your friend's crypto venture, but possessing options feels vastly different from having zero options. The mental impact reaches beyond purely financial choices. When you've got money saved, you rest better. And I mean this physically. Research demonstrates that individuals with emergency reserves report substantially improved sleep compared to those without savings. Financial stress ranks among the top insomnia causes, and removing that stress delivers instant health advantages. Your connections strengthen too. Money worries get cited as a primary divorce and family conflict driver. When you're not perpetually concerned about payments, you've got more emotional bandwidth for people you value. You're less cranky, less tense, and more engaged during interactions. There's also something worth mentioning about the confidence surge from having funds banked. You enter job discussions differently when you're aware you don't desperately require the role. You're likelier to discuss compensation and perks because you're not functioning from fear. This assurance often yields superior offers and stronger pay, establishing a positive cycle that speeds your financial advancement. But let's confront the obvious concern. $10,000 might feel like a massive sum if you're presently living paycheck to paycheck. The encouraging news is you don't need to save everything immediately. Actually, attempting overly aggressive saving frequently backfires because it's unsustainable. The most successful savers I've encountered began with laughably modest amounts. Perhaps $50 monthly, maybe even $25. The secret is regularity, not the initial contribution size. Once you establish the routine of saving something monthly, you can progressively boost the amount as earnings grow or as you discover expense reductions. Here's a dose of reality that might inspire you. The typical American spends over $3,000 yearly on coffee, restaurant meals, and convenience buys. That's excluding major costs like vehicle payments or streaming services. If you could redirect merely a third of that expenditure towards savings, you'd reach your $10,000 in under 3 years. I'm not proposing you never enjoy coffee or restaurant dining, but I'm highlighting that most individuals have more budget flexibility than they recognize. The gap between someone who builds savings and someone who doesn't typically boils down to awareness and purpose, not income level. The multiplying impact of having $10,000 extends well past the immediate security it delivers. It transforms how you process risk, how you handle opportunities, and how you strategize for what's ahead. Most significantly, it demonstrates to yourself that you're capable of reaching financial targets. When you've saved your first $10,000, you begin thinking differently about your next $10,000 and then the one after. Before long, you're traveling toward genuine financial independence. Not through luck or inheritance, but through developing the patterns and mindset that make wealth accumulation unavoidable. The shift occurring when you save your first $10,000 isn't solely about the cash itself. It's about becoming the kind of individual who maintains savings. And that identity transformation creates effects extending into every area of your existence in ways you likely never anticipated. Let's address something called decision fatigue, which sounds like business jargon nonsense, but represents a legitimate psychological reality. Daily, you make thousands of minor financial judgments. Should I grab the generic pasta or brand name? Can I afford takeout today or should I prepare a sandwich? Is premium fuel worth it or will standard work fine? Each micro choice consumes mental power, and by day's end, you're drained from perpetually calculating affordability. But here's what occurs when you've banked $10,000. Suddenly, 90% of these routine financial decisions become irrelevant. You're not choosing between generic and brand name pasta from bank account worries. You're selecting based on actual preference. This might seem trivial, but imagine the mental energy you'd recover by stopping survival-based calculations 50 times daily. I know someone who shared that their first grocery trip after hitting $10,000 in savings nearly brought tears. Not because they splurged on luxury foods, but because they realized they could concentrate on what they genuinely wanted to consume instead of what they could afford. That's a freedom level most don't even recognize they're lacking until experiencing it. Now, let's be honest about something financial advisors don't always stress. Having $10,000 saved doesn't make you wealthy. It doesn't mean you can abandon your career and become a professional beach athlete. You'll still hesitate before purchasing a $1,000 gadget you don't truly need. But what it provides is breathing space, and breathing space forms the foundation of every sound financial choice. When you're not desperate for financial oxygen, you can genuinely think strategically about money instead of merely responding to whatever emergency surfaces next. Perhaps you notice your auto insurance renewal approaching, and you've actually got time to comparison shop for superior rates instead of automatically accepting their renewal. Maybe you spot that your mobile plan is absurdly expensive, and you can transition to something cheaper without stressing over switching costs. These improvements might only net you $50 or $100 monthly, but when you're not money stressed, you're likelier to catch these chances. And those modest improvements accumulate over time into real savings that make your subsequent financial objectives objective, even more reachable. Here's something fascinating about human thinking that most don't grasp. When your savings are zero, each dollar feels precious because losing it means you're closer to financial disaster. But when you've saved $10,000, individual dollars begin feeling less precious, which actually makes you readier to spend on things that might boost your earning capacity. This appears backward, but it's incredibly significant. The individual with no savings might skip a $50 networking gathering because 50 bucks feels substantial when you're paycheck to paycheck. But the person with $10,000 saved might attend that identical event and wind up connecting with someone offering them a position, paying $5,000 more annually. The safety net doesn't render you careless with funds, but it does make you readier to invest in possibilities. I've witnessed this unfold repeatedly. Individuals who establish their first substantial savings often experience sudden career acceleration, not because possessing money directly creates promotions, but because financial security grants them confidence to pursue chances that struggling people simply cannot afford. Let's discuss something nobody addresses in finance articles, yet everyone experiences in actual life: the social aspects of money. When you're constantly stressed about your financial state, it impacts how you engage with others in subtle yet meaningful ways. You might dodge social events because you cannot afford participation. You might feel ashamed about financial struggles and grow isolated. You might even develop bitterness toward friends appearing more financially stable. So, there you have it. $10,000 isn't merely a figure in your account. It's a complete psychological evolution touching every dimension of your existence. From sleeping more soundly to entering job discussions with genuine confidence rather than desperation, this milestone produces a chain reaction most never anticipate. If you're currently looking at a bank balance resembling a 1950s phone number, don't stress. Begin modestly, maintain consistency, and remember that the person you evolve into while saving your first $10,000 is infinitely more precious than the money itself.